All right, Bulls and Bears, how's everybody doing? Hope you're well. Back with another dose. And the economic reality today is wild, and it seems like every time I look at the news, more insanity is unfolding. Please make sure you are subscribed. We need to stay ahead of this financial curve because things are changing rapidly, and a lot of things are coming to light. And some things that you may have suspected have recently come out of the shadows here, and we're going to talk about a couple big stories today. One is we have corporate or institutional property owners, landlords, price fixing, right? Several different companies involved, several different big major companies that own a lot of real estate. We're talking millions and millions of properties and rental units. Um, a big story. So we're going to get into that. Also, what did we just find out recently? Over a $500 billion, a trillion with a T, in unrealized losses for many different banks. We're going to get into that. What should you do with your money? Should you be concerned about this, right? I think most of you know, if you've been on this channel, you know that the banks are in big, big trouble. A lot of big losses, especially when it comes to commercial real estate. You probably know this very well. We've talked about this many, many times. We were one of the first channels, maybe even the first channel, to raise the flags on this, in 2021. When people started rushing to work at home, we saw all these vacant commercial real estate buildings, properties, and we told you the banks were loaning out money hand over fist with a non-fractional system where they could just loan out as much money as they wanted to because the money didn't have to be in reserves to loan it out. We told you that was a big, big problem, and now it's coming home to roost, and we have a lot of banks in big, big trouble, and what you should look out for, right? But first, let's go ahead and start with this price fixing situation here, and I'm going to just show you a couple of the headlines. I did read through about 3 different articles about this to make sure I give you the correct and proper breakdown. All right, this one is out of Entrepreneur, and here's the headline: Is one company to blame for soaring rental prices in the U.S.? The FBI recently raided major corporate landlord while investigating a price fixing scheme. So basically, what you may have suspected is true. No, I shouldn't say all, a big majority of the companies that buy homes, and some of them buy tens of thousands of units, multifamily properties, even single family residences. But the total is about 16 million rentals owned between the companies that were doing this. Now, one company just got raided here recently to be investigated for price fixing. Right now, normally you have a lot of different businesses, a lot of different landlords. They figure out what they need to charge for rent based on the local market, based on what units are renting for. If one sits vacant, of course, they're going to look at dropping the price. So what was happening, a lot of these companies, several of them got together and used the same piece of software. Now, what the companies are going to say is they're going to say, "Oh, we're just use the same software as these other companies. We're not colluding. We're not price fixing." But that's what's being said here, is that they were price fixing, basically all getting together, using the same piece, and not getting together all in the same room, but using the same pricing mechanism. So if one corporate landlord was going to raise the rents on, let's say, 5 million units, the other companies knew about this, and they knew that prices were going to be high. So then they raised their prices because they knew that they could safely raise their prices because the other prices weren't going to be lower, because again, they all were on the same software. They knew what each other were charging. Right now, some would just say this is just technology. This is just the way that landlords correctly price their units. Right, that's the kind of the innocent stand on this, or the innocent view. The other view is that these companies were colluding, price fixing, knowing all of the prices amongst other corporate landlord, all the units, all the dwellings, knowing what the prices were. They knew they could safely raise their prices. So then you have a competition on how high can you raise the price, right? So this is what is being reported here. Let me just read you a little excerpt out of this here. The move was reportedly part of an investigation into RealPage, that's the software company, that recommends prices for landlords. So it's just a data collection software that helps landlords price their units and their homes as high as possible by analyzing other rents, right? But when all the companies get together and they're all raising prices, I shouldn't say all, but it's a lot. Over 16 million rental units across the US use this algorithm. When they all get together and they all raise their prices because they know what the other ones are going to be charging, then it becomes a big problem. And you wonder why rents had skyrocketed, right? There's a few different reasons, but this was one of the big reasons. And I have a problem with corporate landlords. You have the same type of lending going on too as you do in commercial real estate, right? You have fractional lending going out to these institutions, buying up tens of thousands of homes and rental units on borrowed money. And why is it so easy for these institutions to borrow money? Because the banking system allows banks to loan out money that they don't even have. And this is going to transition into our next story. This is going to be a good segue because we now have a $500 billion in unrealized losses at these banks, right? For loaning out, one, commercial real estate, that's a big one. But two, a lot of the banks also lending money to these corporate landlords, again, so they can go out and buy tens of thousands of rentals, and then they can get together. Or even if it's just one company, if they decide to raise their rents on all their units, you're going to see a big problem, and that causes this affordability crisis that we're in right now, right? So let's talk about that next here. But what do you think about the price fixing scheme? Here's another headline about the same story. This is out of payments.com. FBI rates corporate landlord in major rent price fixing probe. Do I think anything is going to get better because of this? I seriously doubt it, because uh, companies that can borrow a lot of money, guess what? They can also afford the very best attorneys, very best attorneys. So it's rare that you see a crackdown on such a scheme. And I think it is a scheme, but is it illegal? That's the thing, right? People can get together, they can talk about prices, what prices are, what they should be, but to say that that is against the law, that's going to be the challenge for anybody prosecuting these companies. And you have to ask, who's going to be doing the prosecuting, right? So it's going to get very interesting, but that's just one of the reasons why rents have skyrocketed. There's many other reasons too. We can go into that. We can go into the moratoriums. We can go into even the housing market, right? When people can borrow money that they shouldn't be able to borrow, right, to buy homes that cost way too much, that's going to push up rental prices, right? Because the more people have to pay for real estate, the higher home prices go. That's going to cause a bigger demand for rentals. And then if the rental units are just going up in price too, that's going to cause a problem across the board, right? But let's talk about what came out here recently. This is huge here. $517 billion, billion with a B, in unrealized losses hit U.S. banking system. The FDIC recently came out and said 63 lenders are on the brink of insolvency. All right, no surprise to any of you here. I guess if you're new, you may find this surprising or shocking, but it's not it shouldn't be a revelation. It shouldn't be a surprise. 63 lenders on the brink of insolvency. So here's the thing. The banks, they can sit there and hold these troubled loans. They can hold them until there's a recovery. Or a buyer, probably the Fed, can come in and buy these loans from the banks, right? So there's a few ways out of this. So it's not a definite panic, right? The banks aren't going to go down tomorrow. But if there's not a huge purchase of these bad loans, this could come back to really bite the banks. And you could see a lot of bank failures very quickly. Do I think they're going to let that happen? If they do, it's just going to be a consolidation where the big 5 or 6 huge mega banks buy out a lot of the smaller and regional banks that are in the most trouble here, right? So there's a lot of different ways they could gloss over this or consolidation method this into trying to solve the problem. So take this data with what you will. I mean, do you want to go and get your money out of the bank, or do you feel like they're just going to print, or they're just going to find a way to pay off everybody that might lose their money, right? So Janet Yellen's out there, and she's been on recordings on video saying that they'll do whatever they have to do to, quote, quote protect depositors, right? What's going to happen is the FDIC is going to get together with the Fed, with the Treasury, and they're just going to create the money to give out to the people that normally would have lost their money when these banks fail. But then again, you have the consolidation, you have other banks coming in and buying these um, accounts, right? So it's very interesting. But here's something that I think we all should think about. All right, let me just read you an excerpt here. The unrealized losses U.S. banking system are once again on the rise. We told you commercial real estate was not going to recover. Uh, People working at home. The cities are going to trash. Many downtown city areas going to trash. Look at San Francisco. Look at Los Angeles. People don't want to drive to some downtown area, have to go out and buy lunch somewhere. The restaurants are in big trouble. A lot of these former hubs of employment or companies. In its quarterly banking profit report, the FDIC says banks are now saddled with more than $500 billion in paper losses on their balance sheets due largely to the exposure in residential real estate. So here's the thing. Also, if you see another bank run where people start to get fearful and panic and they rush to take their money out of the banks, that could be another thing that's going to maybe start a new wave and trigger another wave of bank failures. Right? I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but the risks are rising and things are not getting better. They just said it increased, right? And we told you here it was going to continue to get worse. There's no recovery from what was done over the past 10, 15 years with rock bottom interest rates, unlimited amounts of money being loaned out, credit cards, loans, asset prices being pushed up into the stratosphere, wages nowhere near keeping up with the cost of living and inflation. And in fact, that's going to be another segue into our next story. And just more proof and underpinnings of what we've been talking about here in this channel. Most people are struggling. Majority of middle class Americans say they struggle financially. That's how Bloomberg put it. Another survey, and we've got around 2/3 of people surveyed that are considered middle class. Right, middle class is now lower class. It seems like said they are facing economic hardship and they don't anticipate a change for the rest of their lives. So not only are they admitting that they're in financial hardship, they don't see any recovery on the horizon. That was a poll recently commissioned from the National True Cost of Living Coalition. 2/3 people, 2/3 of people. So that's 66%, so between 60 and 70%. The top 10, 20, even 30% are doing, of course, better than they were a few years ago. But the majority, again, 60 to 70%, based on poll after poll after poll, and probably just based on what a lot of you are seeing out there. You know, are you doing better than you were 4 years ago? Some people are, some aren't. I happen to be doing a little bit better, not a lot better, but a little bit better. Because if you know how to position for all this chaos, then you can actually make money from this, right? And I think some of our investments that we've been talking about here on this channel, if you're holding silver, you're going to be really heavily rewarded here in the very near future, not 10, 20 years, 1, 2 years. You're going to see massive, in my opinion, massive increases in your wealth if you're holding silver, right? And hopefully you've been stacking. That's why I say here, stack. Also continue to prepare. There's a lot of risks out there and risks are escalating. Here's another one here. Take a look at this. Another ramp up in the war scenario here. The president recently indicated that we're not going to rule out boots on the ground if China invades Taiwan. So you get another war, another conflict, another part of the world that we're going to be involved in. Not ruling out boots on the ground, quote, not ruling out boots on the ground in Taiwan in the scenario of a future Chinese invasion. And it's boiling, right? With this type of response, it's really nothing new when it comes to American politicians being used to intervene in foreign affairs, right? So there's another one. It all seems to happen. These types of things happen when the economy gets to the boiling point or breaking point, whatever you want to call it. Interesting times, folks. Make sure you subscribe. What do you think about the collusion across the different multi landlords that own multiple units, millions of units, 16 million rental properties and units. What do you think about that? Was it a price fixing mechanism, or is it just technology being used to properly price these properties? I think, my opinion, I'd like to know what you think about it. What do you think about the problem banks over $500 billion, unrealized losses? Watch your money, folks. Be careful out there. Come back to this channel for more updates. We're always going to be on top of it for you. Hit that button here, folks. Help us out. Big love, everybody. Keep stacking. Bye for now. Peace.